It's that time of year again. Join North Star for its annual homecoming event at Howard University in Washington, D.C. We'll be in person November 13th and 14th and online Wednesday, November 20th, celebrating GIS Day. This year, the theme is art, Afrofuturism, and geography, and we are so excited to feature Black geographers and geo-practitioners leading the efforts in climate and environmental justice, geo-AI, storytelling, and more. Help us elevate these voices and shape the future. You won't want to miss it. Get your tickets today at northstarofgis.org/homecoming.
Be Black. Be bold. Be innovative. Show the world equitable geo.
We're coming together as a collective to celebrate people of African descent, the diaspora, and talking about geospatial equity and justice.
You're listening to the North Star Gaze, a podcast with intimate stories from geoluminaries.
All right. So it was the winter of 2009, and you gave your parents a GPS unit for Christmas. At the time, did you know your mom was one of two people whose research is credited with creating the technology behind the ubiquitous GPS unit?
I did not know.
Which is amazing. So, hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here today speaking with Carolyn Oglesby, the daughter of Dr. Gladys B. West, the hidden figure behind the GPS unit. Welcome, Carolyn. And I know we're here to focus on your mom today, but before we begin, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why it's important for you to be here today?
Sure, I am happy to be here. I am Carolyn Oglesby, the daughter of Dr. Gladys B. West. I am currently a financial manager for the Department of Defense at Quantico, Virginia. And my mom can no longer do the public events and interviews and things. So I am trying to carry on her story. She really wants people to know that you just need to have a dream, find your passion, and go for it, and don't let obstacles stop you along the way.
Okay, I love that. All right. I knew your mom's name because I'm in the geographic information sciences field. But once I started digging into everything, I was expecting this full onslaught of technological lingo. I was going to get lost in it. And I was not. I love your mom's entire story. So why don't we go from the point where the story broke? Because I think that it's significant how it happened, why it happened, and who led the way. So how was it discovered that your mom was the person behind the GPS unit? According to Forbes, only two people are credited, your mom and Albert Einstein. So let's get into it.
Okay. We were at a sorority meeting, Alpha Kappa Alpha, and on that particular meeting, we were honoring our senior members, which Mom was one of. And they had to write a short bio of what they did in their career. And so Mom talked about her 42-year career with the government. And then she put in one sentence that said that she was working on the global positioning system in the 1950s and 1960s. And one of the source, Gwen James, she was just amazed that Mom had anything to do with this. And so she came up and she asked Mom if she could present this story to the local newspaper. She thought it was fascinating. Mom still didn't know at the time what all of that meant. She didn't understand why it was so special. And then the Freelance Star, our local paper, came to the house to interview Mom. And it was at that point that I realized what Mom had worked on in her career and the things that even Dad did. And then we were trying to explain to Mom how important it was that this GPS is used every day. So.
Yes. Okay. I love that story. And it's so fascinating. How did your mom react to the news? Because, we hear global positioning system, and to the lay person, it can get lost, but it is actually the GPS. And so how did your mom react to the news? Did it just spark oh, wow?
I think it did when they were doing the interview and asking the questions, and when they got to the point where they said the GPS is used every single day and in so many things that we used, I think at that point she started realizing what she had done and her contributions. But all along, she just thought of it as a job. She was trying to do things for the military, and that was just her everyday work.
Yeah, everyday heroes and everyday extraordinary, ordinary people. So I know due to the classified nature of your parents' work, you found out when your mom found out. So can we go into that just a little bit more, just for the superficial explanation?
Sure. Both of my parents worked for Dahlgren Naval Base. They were both mathematicians, and everything was top secret because all of their work was to deal with getting materials to the military. So they could not discuss it at home. It never really crossed our minds as kids to ask what they were doing. From the beginning, it was secretive. All the other kids on the base, their parents were doing the same thing. So no one said, "What do your parents do?" And that building, K-Lab, where everyone was, that's where everyone worked who lived on base.
Okay. All right. So thank you for setting that foundation. So let's talk about Gwen James. Gwen James is an AKA, I'm assuming a Black woman,
Yes.
who cared enough, saw your mom, and broke the story. Can you tell me the significance of that, the bond that Black women have and the uncanny ability to see them and to see them clearly?
It is just really special that Gwen did this. She promoted mom. There was never any kind of, "Oh, I should keep this secret so someone doesn't look better than I do." She, from the very beginning, thought so much of mom and just thought the story should be shared. And she has stayed in the game all along. She has been promoting. She represents mom if she hears something. She was just honored at a celebration in October for breaking the story about mom. She's just a kind, loving woman.
Oh, that's sweet. I'd love to meet her. Okay. It sounds like your mom was driven by different motivating forces. Your mom talks about it all began with a dream, and that's the name of your mom's book. When I read the book, similar to reading the articles, I expected a lot of technical jargon. Your mom was really intentional about doing something different with her biography. And so could you tell us how the biography came about?
Okay.
Tell us a little.
Mom, she was a very serious person in every aspect of her life. Her personal life, she was very structured. In work, she was very dedicated to that job, to making sure she was the best. With family, she was very structured. We were taught the importance of family. We ate our meals together. We went on trips together. Everything was very organized. And she always says that that's why math is a good field for her, because it is very structured. And mom is very structured with her faith. And we always went to church and church events. And she's very serious about extended family.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about the structure and wanting to do a good job, because I think to understand how strong that motivating force was, you have to understand your mom's early life. Your mom has lived through a vast amount of American history.
Okay. So she did grow up on the farm, and they did all the farm chores before and after school. But mom was very focused on getting to school, learning the material that was presented, and making those top grades. And so mom made good grades in all of her subjects. And she and another friend, they worked together to kind of compete, but, just working to encourage each other. And one of mom's teachers said to her that she was so good in all of her subjects that as a career, she knew mom wanted to go further. As a career, she should consider majoring in math. She said math has a lot more opportunities than just being a teacher, that she could work other positions and that she felt she could do it. So from that point on, mom just focused on making those top grades. And mom did worry about how she could get to college because of money. And then the state of Virginia started offering 2 scholarships per school to anyone who was going to Virginia State. So Mom was determined to get one of those scholarships. And she did. She graduated as valedictorian, and her best friend graduated as salutatorian. So they both got scholarships.
Nice, nice. So, what role do you think it played in your mom's educational journey to have teachers who looked like her, who saw her potential, and who nurtured that potential from early school years into Virginia State University, which is a historically Black college and university? So, what role do you think it played to have teachers who looked like her?
I think it was a huge, phenomenal role because the teachers, of course, they taught the educational material, but they also taught them how to behave, how to dress, how to carry themselves, how to be good citizens in school. So that was important in her elementary and high school years. But when she got to college, to have those professors that knew what the world was like and just they became second parents to the students, a little different than schools are today. They were really taking over that parental role. And Mom was blessed to be able to live with 2 professors at Virginia State. They, Dr. and Dr. Hunter, Mom lived with them and took care of their daughter. But at the same time, they were introducing her to things in the college campus and in the world. And they were just really great role models. Dr. Louise Hunter, she introduced Mom to Alpha Kappa Alpha. When Dr. Hunter was working on her PhD, she was going to UVA, and she took Mom with her. So Mom saw that whole PhD process and got that in her mind as a goal for later on as well.
Yes. And if I could say, that has to be the quintessential dream that your mom had. And we'll get into that. It's never too late. So it seems like your mom was driven and motivated to be the best, to be a lifelong learner, had good mentors, was nurtured. And I think that that creates a lens that you use to view the world. And I tell some people my story and I say, I have experienced nothing but goodness in people. And I think that that informs the way that I interact with the world. And I usually will see the good, and you really have to work hard to prove the bad. And I think that that's something that I picked up through your mom's story. Okay. So take us through how the Dahlgren job came along. So 1956 was before the civil rights movement, to put it in context for everyone. And your mom was being pulled out of this nurturing, secure, majority Black environment, and now taking this journey into this space where your mom knows her stuff. And she's now gone into a space where she might have to work hard to prove her stuff. So can you take us through how the job came about, what your mom was thinking? Was she nervous? Did she question if she made the right decision?
So when Mom graduated college, she taught for 2 or 3 years, and then she went back to get her master's degree. After she got her master's degree, she started applying for jobs at Dahlgren and various places. She didn't get anything, so she went back to teaching. And 3 months after she started back teaching, she received a call from Dahlgren to come for an interview. And she was very excited. That is where she wanted to work. However, transportation was much different back then. So to get to Dahlgren, even though it's only an hour and a half now, it would have been a long trip. And she was afraid to go and do the interview and then not get the job. So she turned down the interview. And then the person who was recruiting her, Ralph Neiman, he hired her sight unseen. He felt that her qualifications were what was needed. He was trying to integrate Dahlgren, and so he did. My mom took the job. She was excited, nervous, yes. My uncle drove her there, and they got to Dahlgren. And at that time, Dahlgren was nothing. It was like some buildings and some vast space. So she was a little hesitant, but she was still excited. And she got there, she saw the huge computers. She'd never worked on computers before, but she didn't feel like she didn't belong. She just felt like, I need to study and learn, and I'm going to do this.
No, I love that. And so being in the tech industry myself, looking at how computers went from the size of my living room to barely existing in the cloud is amazing. Okay, so your mom walks into this environment as per usual, we're nervous. And so this was interesting to hear you say, because I was just like, was it weird? Because we know segregation was still in effect. You just said that your mom felt like she belonged. Can you go into that with a little bit more detail? Because I think, again, it goes into sometimes seeing the goodness in people.
Okay. Yes, she felt she belonged. She knew she had a lot to learn and to prove to say, I can do this, but she never felt like, oh, I need to turn around. My mom is a very determined woman and she believes in education. She knew she would take the courses that she needed to learn this. And I think having Ralph Neiman there to make her feel like you do belong, we want you here. He didn't just recruit people and then leave them out to dry. He wanted to integrate the workforce. My dad was the second Black person. My mom was the fourth Black person at Dahlgren. This was their goal. And so mom just was in awe of all the people that she was working around, some brilliant scientists, who helped her to learn the things. No one ever kept things away. Now, I am not saying in this time that there was no racism. There was obvious racism, but no one was blatant. There were subtle things. They may look at you different when you go to the bathroom, things like that, but no one was outwardly rude to her.
Right. And so when I was preparing to have this conversation with you, I actually went back and listened to the Hidden Figures book, watched the movie again. And it was such a stark difference between your mom's experience and the experience of, Katherine Johnson and the other hidden figures. And so I think that might be a testament to Ralph Neiman's influence on making sure, to the extent that I can support you and create an inclusive environment, I'm going to do that. Being a male, he obviously could not go into the ladies' room, right? So there's still obvious people are people and people will people. Okay, so when your mom went to work and where your family lived, it was on the base.
Correct.
And obviously outside the gates, there was the lead up to the civil rights movement. We had, anti-Blackness in the legal system. Brown versus Board was about to happen, the Little Rock Nine and all of that. Did your mom experience anything like survivor's remorse? So being in this more secure environment while knowing that family was out there in the deep South.
I don't think she experienced that. What mom focused on was she felt she had a role in this fight. And her role was to show everyone who was at Dahlgren that she was equal. She deserved to be treated equally. She was as intelligent as they were. She could study and learn. She felt that way, showing them that there shouldn't be a difference because of skin color. That was her fight.
Okay. So thank you for that. Yeah. And I get this from a lot of people who are older than me who say it was safer psychologically to focus on the work and focus on doing good work. And thanks to your mom's good work, we all now have GPS technology at our fingertips. Okay, so when I went back and read the book Hidden Figures, it was still roughly within the same period. Did your mom know of the other hidden figures? Was there a community of people? Did they get together and do things like that?
No, she did not know them. However, she knew that the technologies, the projects that they were working on at Dahlgren were also worked on by NASA and the other services. So there was communication that way. They were aware of what everyone did, but she did not personally know those names. She wishes she had, though.
I know, because when I think of whenever I feel insecure or nervous or have imposter syndrome, I gravitate toward Black women in tech, Black women in GIS, and that helps to further validate what you know. So I kind of wish they had a newsletter or something, but they probably wouldn't have put people's names on the newsletter. Yes. So with all that was going on, there was a lot of upheaval, there was a lot of violence, a lot of fear. How did your mom stay hopeful? Where do you think all of the hopefulness came from?
I believe her faith. I think that's the number one thing. When she was growing up, my grandmother made sure that they were grounded in the church. The church met once a month. My grandmother had incredible faith and belief. And also, I would say after mom got there were 3 more Blacks who got there. So there was a group of 7, and they bonded together. So they met, she says, on Wednesday nights at this restaurant, and they were able to go and kind of release what they were feeling. And I think that bonding helped get them through these times.
Yeah, it helps when you know that you're not the only one experiencing something and that you did not just imagine it. I totally get that. Okay, so let's go through the historical events your mom's life spans. We had desegregation. We had Brown versus Board. We had the civil rights movement. We had the election of a Black president. We had the Little Rock Nine. So what was your mom's reaction? Let's take the election of Barack Obama. What was your mom's reaction to seeing that, understanding when she grew up, she was in a 1-room schoolhouse?
Mom says she never thought that she would live to see this. We were all very excited, but mom just, like you said, based on all of the way the world was, and still racism doesn't go away. And to have this man make this achievement and get there, and so many people supporting him, because it was not just the Black people supporting him. There were white people supporting him. It just gave a sense of hope. She was just really, really thrilled. She had hoped she would get to go to the White House to meet him, but that never happened.
Okay. And then the election of Vice President Kamala Harris.
That was extra special, knowing that she's a soarer. And this was AKA. Mom has always been very proud of AKA because it is the place where you see so many educated Black women. It just gives you so much hope in the world. She always says when she goes to Boulé, she just loves to see 25, 30,000 educated Black women there. And so for Kamala Harris to be our vice president, that just was really special.
Yes, I could imagine. I am not in a sorority, but I understand in the context of everything that is happening now, that having that safe space is so very important. Okay, we've talked about the different social movements. Let's talk about the technological advances that have occurred. I mean, we talked about computers being the size of my living room, and now computers are like in the cloud, literally. We have the internet, the mobile phone, the GPS unit. So taken from calculations, now something that can fit in the palm of your hand, social media. Did all of that blow your mom's mind?
Yes, it still does. So my husband and I and my son, we try to keep my parents up to date with computers. So I'm always buying a computer every couple of years, trying to make sure we teach them Word and Excel. So up until recently, mom had been pretty good in some of those software programs. She is just amazed at the GPS. She is just, I tell her different things and she's like, wow. When we go on trips, she is so fascinated that my husband can find a restaurant using the GPS. So she gets in the car and she's like, okay, find where we're going to eat today, where we're going to go. So I think it still blows her mind with that. Social media, she knows Facebook. She had gotten on a little bit. She doesn't as much, but my dad is on Facebook all day, every day. And so he keeps up with it. And the internet, they know how to Google and find things.
Good. As long as they stay away from TikTok.
Yes.
Okay. So then it must have been super funny when you re-gifted technology to your mom. Like, here's the GPS unit. And your mom's like, I created that.
But when we gave it to her, she had no idea.
I'm just tickled by the thought of re-gifting it. So let's talk a little bit about your mom's groundbreaking work and how it revolutionized technology. Did your mom anticipate that what she was working on at the time was going to be groundbreaking?
Not at all. Her thing was she was working on whatever project was given to her at the time. And so the focus was just making sure the military had the best. So finding those accurate orbits and enabling the military to pinpoint certain targets. That was all she thought about. She never thought about this being a civilian use. And so I think that's why she didn't make the connections with the Garmin and things like that. She knew she did GPS, but she did not know it was the modern day GPS that she contributed to.
And it's so interesting. When I was in grad school and got introduced to GIS, one of the first things they talked about was that it was initially a tool used by the military that was then commercialized. And so the level of accuracy is slightly off because civilians, we don't need that level of accuracy to pinpoint somebody's footsteps. All right. So this brings me to my next question. There are so many Black female hidden figures throughout history. And your mom's work was so pivotal and so important to the military. If you ask your mom, why do you think it took so long for her to get recognized for this work?
Well, that's really a good question. I don't think at the time, she got awards at work for good performance and those kind of things. So I think she thought that was it. I don't think she ever understood her contribution. She solved an equation that no one else could solve, which was so important. But I don't think she understood beyond that. This was my job. I needed to find it and I did it. So the recognition back then, I don't think she expected it, but when she's getting it now, then she will look back and say, well, I wonder why I didn't get recognized. The times back then were so different, though. A lot of things that she worked on, it was very selective in what she could participate in because there were restrictions on travel, participating in different things. And so I just think she didn't think about getting recognized.
Well, I'm happy to be alive at a point where I can give another Black woman her flowers. So thank you, Dr. West. Okay, so let's talk about the restrictions. So in reading your mom's book, it wasn't that your mom looked at life with rose-colored glasses, right? And so your mom knew that during this time, travel in the Deep South was precarious. The entire organization knew. And it's almost that dual reality where you're going to do good work, but you know that racism is keeping you from going further because these were prime opportunities to get out, to travel, to get your name recognized. How did your mom deal with the feelings around that?
I do think there was some disappointment. I think that not being able to present your work or not being given those opportunities, that is disappointing. And mom is such a go-getter and so focused on work, but that was not a detriment in her career. She felt that her job was to treat others as she wanted to be treated and to work hard to show that she deserved a place there just like they did. So she had it double, being Black and being a woman. Not only was it the societal things that were going on, but also moving up the ladder was a little bit harder. Some of those management positions, she took a lot of classes to make sure she could get to the next step where if you had a different skin color, it was not quite as difficult, but still difficult for a woman.
Yeah, a different skin color and a different gender. It's so interesting as we start to uncover all of the hidden figures and we think about the institutions that consciously or unconsciously upheld these barriers, right? Because I want to believe that even as a Black person, if your mom had been male, your mom might have had a different degree of visibility, which might have had her name attached to her work. And even in the intelligence community, in those circles, it would have surfaced and bubbled up. But we're dealing with intersectional racist structures that will, if you're Black and you're a woman, if you're Latinx and you're a woman, if you're gender binary and you're Black, then, then these forces, they multiply and oppress you. But thank you for sharing that. I am so glad that I am alive at a time and your mom is alive at a time where she was able to get all of this recognition. So from all accounts, your mom is a very humble person. How did she handle all of the fanfare? I think she said at one point she would be at media events and she would be so tired, but she made sure she stayed until she got the very last person in line to get that autograph. How did your mom handle that?
It was a little overwhelming at first. She was in her later 80s when this recognition started, so it wasn't as easy physically. But at the beginning, she went to all of the events, and yes, she wanted to make sure she spoke to everyone who wanted to speak with her. I think she's just excited still about it. When I tell her, like I told her I was doing this interview today, and she's just glad that the story still gets out. With Mom, it is so much more than the GPS. And so when she's going to these different events, she's just trying to make sure that people know, don't give up on your dream, keep going. So she's grateful. And she's also, it's hard for her to not be able to do some of the things now, but
Oh, you're going to make me cry because when I think I'm raising two little girls and when your mom, I know a big part of what motivated her to continue to push on after the story broke was that she wanted people, little kids, little girls to see that they could do this. And so it just warms my heart. Okay, so I'm all emotional. And so let me shift gears a little bit to your mom being a lifelong learner. So your mom has a bachelor's, 2 masters, and then at about 60 was working toward a PhD. And you said that that was your mom's dream. So can you take us through that story?
Sure. So yes, Mom believed in studying and she really wanted to get that PhD. She knew she was going to retire in her late 60s. So she started taking the coursework while she was working for the PhD. At that time, again, Dahlgren was ahead. It was a satellite-based program. So Virginia Tech came to Dahlgren. And then Mom had to go to Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, like a week at a time here and there. And then when she retired, she started working on the dissertation. Unfortunately, shortly after she retired, she had a stroke. And so she had to recover from that. But not one time during that recovery did she say, I can't finish the dissertation. It was, I will recover and I will get back to the dissertation. And praise God, the only real effect from the stroke, she learned to walk, she learned to do everything again, was she lost hearing in one ear. So she started back on the dissertation and we all jumped in. Up until that point, she had been doing all the typing, but I got there and helped her with some of the typing. My son was helping with some of the technological things. My dad was helping. It was a family effort, but she finished that PhD and she was so extremely happy. And she walked in graduation, which was great.
Right. oh, thank you. That feels like, and I wasn't even there, like it was such a special moment, when it's just like, I did this for the entire family. And it was a family lift. Okay, so let's talk about the book. The book was not what I expected. I am a techie, I'm a scientist. And so it's just like the GPS unit, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall asleep. But from the very beginning, it was different. And so can you tell us how the book came about?
Sure. So Mom always wanted to write a book way before any of this had happened. And so throughout different phases in life, she started writing an outline of what she would do. The purpose of the book was for family to know what she had done in her life. And then after the recognition came out, so this is a very small world. One of the 7 families who lived at Dahlgren and was integrating Dahlgren, they had 2 children. And after they moved off base, they had one more child. This child, Dorcas Jones, she was friends with Marvin Jackson. And Marvin Jackson said, I would like to do a documentary on several Black people who have done great things. And I would love to get in touch with Gladys West. And Dorcas said, she's friends with my parents. Her parents were deceased. And so she called my mom And they came down. Marvin did the interview for the documentary, and her family came so we could all reconnect again. And Marvin was just so kind and just really took his time with Mom. It wasn't just an interview, just trying to get the facts. He wanted to know who Mom was. And so after he left, Mom started talking about the book again. And she started writing something, and she said, like, I grew up on a farm and this. And I said, Mom, there are a lot of people who grew up on a farm. You have to say more than that. But that technical side of her was, I did this, this, this. And so I said, if we're going to get this book done, because you're getting close to 90, we need help. And I asked her if I could ask Marvin. And Marvin said yes immediately. And he spent almost 2 years getting to know Mom. He went to all of her recognition events. He spent some weekends coming down, having dinner, talking. He went to family reunions so he could get to know her. And he talked to a lot of friends who had worked at Dahlgren, and he got to know the real her. And he took that story. And I was adamant that it had to be genuine, no fluff. So we spent a lot of time reviewing what was written, making sure if he put something that he said, Mom said, it wasn't something that she would say, we took it out and changed it.
Well, I know in listening to the epilogue of the book that it was really important for your mom to tell a true accounting of her story. And I so appreciate it for so many reasons that I won't get into. I do thank her for her transparency and her realness and her down-to-earthness. Can you tell us a little bit about the significance of the title? I think we talked about it and it's been woven throughout this discussion, but can you tell us in a more concrete way the significance of the title of the book?
So Mom's dream was to get off the farm. She did not enjoy being dirty and all the things that come along with the farm. She wanted to do something different. So it was her dream to get an education and get a job where she could support herself and her family back home. And so the book symbolizes that dream and that passion she had. And it talks about some of the obstacles along the way, but how she didn't let them stop her. And that's the dream that she's trying to tell people. When you have a dream, don't think you can't get there. The path may not be straightforward, but you can do it. And she's just trying to inspire others.
And you don't do it alone, right? So I would be remiss in having this conversation with you about your mom if I didn't touch on the role of an HBCU education, the Black sororities and fraternities. We call it the Divine Nine for the culture, and what role that played in your mom's life. What role did being an AKA and going to an HBCU play in your mom's life?
Going to the HBCU, I think it was just the perfect scenario back in that time. Of course, in that time, there were not many other choices, but looking back on it, you realize that even if there were other choices, going to the HBCU provided so much of making you who you are today. She learned all of being a good citizen and a hardworking person and carrying that education with her. So the role of the HBCU was very, very important. AKA, that's her heart. You know, she just, you learn your etiquette, you learn how to carry yourself, you learn how to just be the best, and you're encouraged by all of the other sisters around you who have done such phenomenal things. And it's a sisterhood and it's a support system. I pledged 10 years ago, so I didn't go to an HBCU and I was not part of the sorority. And one of the things that they said was the sisterhood is so important. And it is. The sisters are there for you all the time. They support Mom. Even in her 93 years, they still call, and they're a great support system.
Okay. And so just to put a finer point on it, your mom stayed with the Hunters, and Dr. Hunter introduced your mom to the AKA sorority. And so fast forward, then it was Gwen James, a soror, who helped to break the story. So what I wanted to put a pin in is that you have a dream, but you also have a village, and you want to make sure that that village also supports that dream.
Yes.
And
Mom
so,
had a great village starting from elementary school because there are not too many teachers who encourage young women to go into a STEM field. And here she had that teacher at such a young age and such a time long ago who saw that potential in Mom and put her on that path. And then to get into Virginia State and have the hunters as mentors, as well as her other professors, that was important. And then to get a job at Dahlgren and to know you have been recruited by the head of the command to come and work because he believed that you could do it. And then all of the other scientists around who were encouraging and she learned from. That was a huge village. AKA was just a source of comfort and encouragement. And you see the others, you see who has come before you and what they have done. And I think that that's an encouragement. And your village from your church family. And after she started at Dahlgren, her biggest village was my dad. You know, they married and, you know, he encourages her even to this day.
oh, I love a good romance story. And so it's interesting that over the span of your mom's 93 years, there's been a shift, right? Because back in the 50s, it seems like it was equal opportunity to get into a STEM field. And now that has changed. So we're going backwards for the wrong things.
In many areas.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. So, in the vein of looking at the forest for the trees, we looked at the trees. We looked at your mom's upbringing. We looked at your mom's family. We talked about the GPS unit. Let's talk about the forest. So, your mom, Dr. West, is quite the rock star to me and those of us in the GIS field. But to you and your brothers and your dad, she was a mom. She was a wife. She was a friend. She was a soror. You all must be so proud of her.
Very proud of her. She is a great example of a life well lived, of a life doing things that you believe in. Now, growing up, Mom was, I mentioned earlier, very, very serious. But as an adult looking back, I see the importance of that seriousness. She was training us without saying you have to do this and you have to do that, but she was training us every day for this world that we live in. She is a great role model. My son thinks the world of my parents. They, you know, he is always talking and listening and learning from them. My grandchildren just adore my parents. And so they're still teaching and learning from that. I have two granddaughters who recognize her. I have another granddaughter who's still really young, but I have two that recognize her when they're out somewhere and they see her picture. Of course, they don't understand all of it, but they know that's her. And that's that little girl that you want to see aspire to be more.
So today we've been discussing the extraordinary life of your mom, Dr. Gladys B. West, touching on her early life, her career. And so, Carolyn, what's next? Thinking about the entirety of your mom's life, what does she want her legacy to be?
So when you ask what's next, my mom said, I think I'll write another book. And I kindly told her, no, we won't be writing any more books. But what's next? I think she just wants to encourage people, especially the young children. She misses being able to go into the school systems, and she and my dad and telling about careers and encouraging them. She still gets requests for people to autograph some note cards because they're adding them to a school collection. She enjoys that. She just wants people to be encouraged, inspired to be all that they can be. And personally, I'm just trying to get her to enjoy life. She deserves a rest in life. She deserves to have us take care of her and my dad and sit back and do word searches and watch movies. So we're trying to get to that point.
And thank your dad for supporting your mom and all of you. Okay. So is there anything else you want us to know about your mom?
I want people to know that mom is just very grateful for everything that she is receiving right now. Even though she's not on Facebook and she's not on Instagram, she has those accounts and people write, and I make sure, and my son makes sure that she sees all of it. We respond as we can. But she's just grateful that she has been able to go on this journey so late in life, and she doesn't reflect back on that she wasn't recognized earlier. She's pleased with what's happening now.
Awesome. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for sharing your mother's story with us. And I thank you personally for giving me this experience. I would not have my career if it were not for your mom. And so thank you, Dr. West. For those who are eager to learn more about Dr. West, where can they find out information online? Do you have a website, social media pages dedicated to your mom's work and legacy?
So we have a Facebook page, a Twitter page, and an Instagram page, and they're all under Dr. Gladys B. West. And you can communicate that way. And if anyone can't get through, or if I miss a message, my email is carolyn.oglesby@gmail.com. And I do check that all the time so they can reach me that way.
Okay. And then what's the name of your mom's book and where can they find it?
It is called It Began with a Dream, and it is by my mom and Marvin Jackson, and it is available on Amazon. It is in paperback, it is in Audible, and it's an ebook.
All right. Well, Carolyn, thank you again, and we really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the North Star Gaze, intimate stories from geoluminaries. If you're inspired to advance racial justice in geofields, please share this podcast with other listeners in your community. The intro and outro are produced by Organized Sound Productions with original music created by Kid Bodega. The North Star Gaze is produced in large part by donations and sponsorship. To learn more about North Star of GIS, check us out at northstarofgis.org and on Facebook or Instagram at GIS North Star. If you'd like to support this podcast and North Star of GIS, consider donating at northstarofgis.org/donate. Or to sponsor this podcast, email podcast@northstarofgis.org. You've been listening to the North Star Gaze.